Thank you for joining us for NBC2 News at noon. Breaking developments right now. The oil drilling saga comes to a permanent stop in Collier County today after permits are revoked and a lawsuit is filed. The Department of Environmental Protection just took away all of the permits once given to the Dan A. Hughes Company. That includes the controversial Collier-Hogan well site. DEP Secretary Herschel Vineyard tells NBC2, quote, "Revocation of their permits is the only option that offers the assurance that Hughes will not cause damage to our treasured natural resources. We committed to taking any and all regulatory and enforcement action available to us. And today's actions are proof that DEP honors its commitments." Dan A. Hughes failed to meet the department's 9 demands along with additional violations. And Hughes announced it would stop activity in Florida. But without revoking the permits, the department says it could go back to production whenever it wants. But we're not getting away from oil drilling on the East Coast, and the Obama administration just approved the use of sonic cannons to explore for oil and gas off the eastern shore. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management approved guidelines for the air cannons protecting whales and other animals. They'll go in the Atlantic from Florida to Delaware. Energy companies could buy new oil and gas leases and begin drilling in 2018 if they find profitable reserves. Now, this could be a major concern for wildlife because a government study found the cannons could cause serious harm. And you bet that we will be following this story.
Today, international investigators are hoping to begin their search for the cause of the plane crash in war-torn eastern Ukraine. We just heard from President Barack Obama that one American was on board. His name is Quinn Lucas Shansman. U.S. intelligence officials say Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, carrying almost 300 people, was brought down by a missile. The nearly 10-mile crash site is in disputed territory controlled by pro-Russian separatists. They say they had nothing to do with the crash, though. Now the United States is volunteering the services of the National Transportation Safety Board and the FBI. Brian Moore picks up our coverage now from Washington.
As the world searches for answers into the crash of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 in eastern Ukraine, the Malaysian government announced it's sending 62 people to the sprawling crash site.
We get assurance from the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
U.S. officials announced today that investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board and the FBI will be headed to the crash site, an area claimed by pro-Russian separatists. It's a crime scene controlled by the people many consider to be the prime suspects. U.S. intelligence officials believe they already know the cause of the crash that claimed nearly 300 souls. An American satellite reportedly picked up the launch of a surface-to-air missile, like one of these spotted in pro-Russian eastern Ukraine.
Most likely it was one of the separatists. Don't forget, they shot down a Ukrainian plane.
And if the separatists were involved,
I think there's going to be hell to pay, and there should be.
Russia was just hit with a new round of sanctions over Ukraine, but this crash threatens to push the crisis to a new level. At a meeting this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin shifted the blame to Ukraine. This tragedy would not have occurred, he said, if there was peace in that land. And on that note, the White House is pressing the Russian government to get behind a ceasefire. Brian Moore, NBC News, Washington.
All right, Brian, thank you. The White House is calling on the Russian government to support a ceasefire.
And as you can imagine, people in Ukraine and Russia are paying tribute to those who died aboard the Malaysian airplane. In the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, residents set up a makeshift memorial outside the Dutch embassy. Locals have stopped by to leave flowers, candles, toys, and other tributes. Meanwhile, mourners have laid flowers at the Malaysian and Dutch embassies in Moscow in memory of the victims. Again, that Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 was traveling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with 298 people on board, including 189 Dutch passengers. Count on NBC2 for the absolute latest in this investigation. Developing at noon after a deadly plane crash near Captiva Island, crews are set to pull the wreckage out of the water.
NBC2 found out investigators found a body inside the plane wreckage on Thursday. Now, according to flight records, the pilot of the Piper PA-32 is Greg Howard of St. Petersburg. NBC2's Jacqueline Beavis is live at Pine Island Marina, where recovery efforts are now underway. Jacqueline.
Lisa, Joe, we are live here. Things on the island seem to be getting a little bit more back to normal for vacationers and those who live here. Within the last couple hours, the plane that we showed you yesterday, that was actually just to my right, moved off to behind me here. You can't even see it now. It's gone completely from the area. Well, to show you some video from a little earlier today, this is where the plane was being moved by several boats. Those boats, all part of this investigation, moving this plane to an area where they can fully investigate what actually happened to this plane, what happened to the flight, what led to that crash from pilot Greg Howard just a couple days ago. Now, we are out here on the island again today. We're still learning more about Greg Howard, the pilot, and what happened that evening. Reporting live, NBC2, Jacqueline Beavis.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. Well, NBC2 following up on gay marriage here in Florida. Take a look at this. A judge ruled that gays can marry in Florida's most gay-friendly county, Monroe County, which includes Key West. Couples celebrated after that circuit judge said same-sex couples could get marriage licenses as early as Tuesday in Monroe County. But an immediate state appeal quickly silenced their wedding bells. Republican Attorney General Pam Bondi is standing in the way. Her notice of appeal creates an automatic stay that prevents any same-sex marriage licenses from being issued. Right now, we're working to find out just how long that automatic stay will be in effect and also how the state plans to move forward with this appeal.
A Florida warden gets fired after an inmate was left in a scalding shower until he died back in 2012. The Department of Corrections said today it has taken too long for leaders at Dade Correctional Institution to investigate the death of Darren Rainey. Rainey was a mentally ill prisoner who was punished in 2012 with a shower so hot that his skin separated from his body. So sad. NBC2 is keeping you informed about this emergency services in Lehigh Acres that are under risk. NBC2 uncovering what's on the line if a proposed fire assessment fee doesn't pass this November. The Lehigh Acres chief says the district would have to close 2 fire stations and get rid of their ambulance service. They're also looking at laying off half of their firefighters. That's 54 jobs in all.
I know a lot of guys are out there interviewing in other departments, but ultimately everyone wants to stay here. We have great crews, great camaraderie, and we love the district.
The fire chief says all of this would dramatically increase response times. The proposed fire assessment fee would cost taxpayers around $290 a year.
Former Cypress Lake principal Tracy Perkins is calling it quits 3 weeks earlier than originally planned. NBC2 got our hands on her personnel file. One record stuck out to us. You may remember last year when students were caught drinking at a high school football game. Well, according to Perkins' file, administrators say she did not handle it to their standards. Now, NBC2 spoke with Perkins off camera. She says she is furious about other information not included in her personnel file. She would not tell us what her plans are for the future.
Live, the news you count on. NBC2 News at Noon.
Florida's new unemployment numbers are out today. Governor Rick Scott announcing the June ratings in Bonita Springs, and NBC2's Christy Andrews was there to find out how we're faring. Christy.
We are learning that this is the biggest increase in jobs since the governor has been in office. Close to 37,000 jobs were added in the state of Florida in the month of June. That takes the unemployment rate from 6.3 to 6.2%, which is below the national average. Around 100 employees showed up to the announcement at Shaw Development in Bonita Springs. The company has been here since 1956 and is expected to add more jobs soon.
We got rid of the sales tax on machinery equipment, which helped companies like Shaw's develop. But today's big day. Shaw
Development manufactures fluid systems for military and heavy-duty devices. Mayor Bill Nelson calls this an exciting day for the state of Florida and also for Bonita Springs. Reporting in Bonita Springs, Christy Andrews, NBC2.
Meanwhile, Charlie Crist and his new running mate will be in Palm Beach today. They'll be speaking with the press at Nick's 50s Diner just before 2 p.m. Crist announced his new running mate Thursday. Annette Tadeo-Goldstein will fight to be the next lieutenant governor. She is the current chairwoman of the Miami-Dade County Democratic Party. She and Crist will try to beat out former Democratic leader Nan Rich during the primary. The winner takes on Governor Rick Scott in November.
Well, weather conditions looking a-okay so far this Friday afternoon. That look at our live radar shows dry conditions from Punta Gorda all the way down toward Naples and Marco Island. Temperatures are off to a warm start so far this afternoon. We've already seen most locations back in the upper 80s, lower 90s. 89 outside right now at Lehigh Acres, 87 at Cape Coral. Fort Myers current temperature right now holding at 89 degrees as well. Now as we go through the afternoon hours, again, the models had a good handle of those spotty showers out in the Gulf, but look at how dry it does keep a vast majority of the state through this afternoon. If we see any isolated pop-up shower or storm, the best coverage would be well to the east of Interstate 75. But again, not expecting a whole lot of major action in terms of rainfall activity across our peninsula here this afternoon. Otherwise today, highs near 93 at Fort Myers, 95 toward Immokalee, 91 at Naples, and your 7-day forecast features a better chance for late afternoon, early evening showers and storms, especially Sunday with highs back near 93 degrees.
So much, Rob. This just in the last hour, NBC2 learning about an arrest involving 2 purse snatchings in Charlotte County. Detectives charged Aaron Matthew Watts of Port Charlotte with robbery. Authorities say he struck at the Publix on Cochran Boulevard and targeted a 61-year-old woman. She did suffer minor injuries after being dragged by her purse strap until it broke. The other incident happened to an 81-year-old woman who was shopping at the Tamiami Trail Winn-Dixie. Thankfully, she was not hurt. Some good news this morning. The Naples High graduate that climbed Mount Kilimanjaro is back, and we caught up with the 25-year-old at the airport as he saw his family for the first time since his breathtaking adventure. There he is, Nick Ballo. Says it took him 6 days to make it to the summit. He says he was the only American in his group of 30 climbers and the first to make it to the top. Breathtaking pictures there. His biggest challenge, he says, the freezing temperatures.
And I thought it would be a tea party at the top. I thought it'd be celebration. I had all these plans for what I do. But you get up there, it's negative degrees, the wind was howling. So we took a few pictures, I smiled, and we spent 2 hours screening down rocks at the end.
He says this climb is something he'll certainly never forget. This was a charity climb, by the way, while he was in Africa. He was raising money back here in Southwest Florida for Aval's Hospice Children Bereavement Services. This is the same group that helped him when he lost his mother from stomach cancer when he was just 5 years old. And so far, he's raised more than $7,000.
Congratulations, Nick, and welcome home. NBC2 was in the courtroom today when more than half of the 100 people arrested for stealing Social Security numbers appeared before a Collier County judge. 41 people were processed yesterday, but the court didn't have time for the rest. This all came to light when the Department of Insurance Fraud found nearly 90% of the employees at an East Naples food processing plant were working with fake identities. We spoke with management who say they knew nothing about this. The owner, Alfie Oaks, was on vacation when that raid went down. Well,
the chikungunya virus appears in the U.S. for the first time, and it's right here in Florida. The mosquito-borne illness is very present in the Caribbean. Typically causes fever, severe joint pain, swelling, muscle aches, headaches, and in rare cases it can be fatal. Now health officials say 2 people bitten by mosquitoes have become infected. They live in Miami-Dade and Palm Beach counties. More than 80 cases have been reported in the state, but before now all were contracted during travel to the Caribbean.
A teenage boy is dead after a John boat overturned on a lake in Central Florida. 2 other teens survived this wreck. FWC says the 14-year-old boy screamed for help from the other boys, but by the time they were able to reach him, he was already underwater. One of the boys swam to shore and sought help from a nearby home. That investigation continues today. A couple accused of squatting in a Tampa home is telling their side of the story. It's an update to a story we first told you about earlier this week. The homeowner says she let her friend crash there for a little while, but then that friend brought her convict boyfriend there to live, and well, they wouldn't leave. The couple says they were legitimate renters.
Did you have a rental agreement?
I had a verbal agreement, yes.
For what?
To stay there for 3 months, and
for
I would pay.
$150.
No. Do you pay rent in advance?
Yes, everyone does.
This all finally ended when the family called the media and the boyfriend's probation officer as well.
Well, in Naples, some neighbors are raising red flags about what they call a dangerous intersection. River Reach residents say Horseshoe Drive and River Reach Way is simply a crash waiting to happen. We saw at least 5 near collisions in about an hour when we staked it out yesterday. Lynn Greenling says she has witnessed around 100 close calls since the lane changes a month ago.
This is a very high traffic area, people walking, exercising, riding their bikes. You're going to see people get hit and hurt.
The city tells NBC2 the changes have to do with new development on the other side of North Horseshoe Drive. There is a gas station almost done there, and more development is on the way. And crews wanted to align entrances and exits with Horseshoe Drive North's intersection there.
The Shy Wolf Sanctuary in Naples is asking for your help. It has been more than a month since the nonprofit group rescued these 6 wolf dogs, but the dogs still don't have a permanent home. The sanctuary says the dogs are hard to adopt out. They require a lot of attention as well as a lot of land to live on. Now, if you are interested in adopting or would like more information, we've gone ahead and put that on our website at NBC-2.com. All you need to do is click on news links.
Oh, sweet babies. Well, an organization that started in Lehigh Acres is focused on feeding those in need, but in a unique way. At Healthy Harvest Community Farms, the mission is to feed the needy by donating the food they grow. From pineapples to peppers, CEO Joe Pearson says 75% of the food grown there is donated to food pantries. Volunteers run the organization. If you're interested, you can help out at the farms tomorrow. Volunteers will plant corn from 8 to 2. All ages are welcome. Lunch is provided. For the address and contact information, go to our website, NBC-2.com.
Hone in on your gardening skills while you're at it. Well, if you're looking for some fun things to do this weekend, we always have you covered.
That's right. Mango Mania kicks off tomorrow on Pine Island. The annual event celebrates mangoes and other tropical fruits. This year's crop a little bit down, though. Farmers say heavy rain early in the season may have set back pollination.
But it will still be a fun family event. The hours are tomorrow from 10 to 7. The proceeds benefit the German American Club.
Well, they deliver your mail and apparently allegedly traffic drugs.
We'll tell you who's accusing FedEx of breaking federal law while they go door to door. A story you do not want to miss.
Yeah, then a story that will give you the chills. Men cleaning out a Florida home find a body. They didn't even know about it. What they mistook it for, coming up.
And the only live Doppler radar in all of southwest Florida, showing rather dry conditions across our corner of the peninsula. We'll talk about your weekend forecast in just a few minutes.
This story out of right here in Florida is pretty freaky. Workers hired to clean out a vacant house threw out what they thought was a mannequin. Turns out it was a body. Candace McOwen explains how this bizarre story all unfolded.
Fred Simerson didn't know much about his neighbor, Jeremy Whitfuth.
He moved out a week later, and I haven't seen him since.
That was a while ago, so Fred thought. But for some time, Whitfuth has been right there in the garage across the street. That is until Thursday, when 2 men hired by the landlord to clean out the house pulled up and got to work.
And I seen the garage door open, so I figured, man, they got their hands full, because when I looked inside the garage, it was full, man.
There was plenty inside, including trash and rodents. Perhaps that's what the men thought they smelled when they found Whitfuth.
That this was a Halloween-type prop or mannequin that was left hanging in the garage as a cruel hoax by the former tenants for the landlords.
Convinced it was just a mannequin, the men took the body to the West Hernando transfer station, where people can dump household waste. They told workers there their mannequin theory. But those workers called deputies, who quickly figured out the mannequin was actually Whitfuth.
Investigators tell us the men who found that body actually traveled all the way from the home across busy US 19 to the dump site, and the entire time they had that body on top of a pile of trash in the back of a pickup truck.
Investigators tell us Whitfuth took his own life. They even found a suicide note. Until the medical examiner does an autopsy, they can only estimate how long Whitfuth was hanging on in this garage.
I said it was at least a couple days to a month and a half, or several days to a month and a half.
That was Candace McCowan reporting. Also new right now, authorities say he's not even a teenager, but he helped save a drowning toddler at a hotel in Indian Rocks Beach right here in Florida. The Tampa Bay Times reports 3-year-old Dominic was swimming the Holiday Inn pool with his father Thursday. That's when 11-year-old Riley Cooper noticed something was wrong with the boy. He helped pull the child from the water. The child was taken to the hospital. Good news, he is expected to survive.
And this weekend marks the 45th anniversary of the first moonwalk. The official anniversary is on Sunday, on July 20th, 1969. The world watched as Neil Armstrong stepped outside, followed by Buzz Aldrin. All the while, their third crewmate, Michael Collins, sat in a lonely orbit around the moon in the Columbia Command Module. NASA has planned a slew of events to reflect on the historic landing and look ahead to the future of space exploration.
And check this out. Speaking of space, you see that in the corner? Appears to be a meteorite. It was captured falling from the night sky in Raleigh, North Carolina. One more time. There it goes. The driver of the car caught the fireball on his car's dash cam late Thursday night. This wasn't apparently the only meteorite last night. There were more than 36 fireballs, reports up and down the East Coast. Very cool.
Well, why don't we direct our attention a little lower in the atmosphere here, back where we typically see weather happen, but not too much of it taking place this morning across southwest Florida, as our first alert live Doppler radar shows dry conditions extending from Punta Gorda all the way down toward Marco Island. You will notice a little spotty downpour out there in the Gulf of Mexico. It's moving toward us, but all the downpours that have been moving toward the coast this morning and this afternoon have basically fallen apart. So we're really not expecting a whole lot of rainfall outside today, as dry air moving in from the north will continue moving over top of the region, keeping things nice and quiet. There's again a closer look at that little downpour. Not too excited about it. It's opportunities for rainfall here, and a couple of downpours to the east of Everglades City. These are moving away from us over toward the Miami area as well. So again, we've got a very dry lunch hour going down, and most of the backyards across this region will stay dry this afternoon as well. Temperature-wise, we're back in the 90s now in LaBelle and Lehigh Acres, upper 80s being reported in Port Charlotte's, Cape Coral, and Sanibel Island. Speaking of Sanibel Island, there it is right on the horizon there as we take a beautiful live look outside at Fort Myers Beach there at the pier. Beautiful conditions outside so far this morning. It's warm outside, so the beach not all too bad of a place to be hanging out during your lunch hour here so far today. As we go through the afternoon, we'll walk through our forecast mode again. The model had a good handle on those spotty showers out in the Gulf of Mexico this morning, but notice as we go through this afternoon, we should say mostly dry conditions across the region. This particular model might be cutting down the overall coverage of rain just a little bit too much. I still would not rule out the opportunity for a pop-up shower or storm east of Interstate 75 this afternoon or this evening. But again, overall coverage of rain very minimal by southwest Florida standards in the month of July. And that looks to be the case for much of tomorrow's forecast as well as we get into toward the upcoming weekend. Temperature-wise, though, today it's going to be a warm one. 95 at Immokalee and LaBelle, 93 toward Fort Myers, even Naples up in the low 90s here this afternoon. Now let's talk about that upcoming weekend. Here's a snapshot of 6 a.m. Saturday. Most backyards once again starting out the weekend with a dry note. But notice this, we walk through the afternoon. This particular high-resolution model is very optimistic on most backyards as staying dry into Saturday afternoon as well. There is the chance, I would not rule out of an isolated pop-up shower or storm across the peninsula, but by most counts, we should see fairly reduced and isolated coverage of any rain activity as we walk through the day on Saturday. Forecast mode picking up on the chance of a few showers north of Port Charlotte toward late Saturday evening. But again, at this point in time, many backyards will trend to be on the drier side right through our Saturday. So not too bad if you're getting outside for the weekend. Now, speaking of the rest of the weekend, we'll have a better chance of more widespread coverage of these showers and storms on Sunday as high temperatures top out at 93 degrees. And then your typical sea breeze induced showers and storms for the upcoming weekend. 93 your forecast high come Monday, down to 92 for your high on Tuesday. But across the board, overnight low is going to hold very consistently, only cooling down into the low to mid 70s.
Thanks so much, Rob. Well, a huge story developing today. FedEx is facing drug trafficking charges, accused of conspiring to deliver prescription drugs for illegal internet pharmacies. A federal grand jury in San Francisco just handed down the indictment. Documents accuse FedEx of shipping prescription drugs from illegal online pharmacies to addicts and to drug dealers. Meanwhile, a spokesman for the company says FedEx is innocent of any wrongdoing. The spokesman says FedEx is innocent. Again, they're willing to assist law enforcement, though, but they can't do the job of law enforcement alone. A conviction could actually mean more than $820 million in fines and penalties against FedEx. Well, it is Fugitive Friday, and your help could actually land some bad guys back in jail.
Trish Rout with Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers joins us now with a rundown on who's on the run.
Absolutely. Well, we're starting off our list this week with a young man who was just released from a residential commitment program just a few weeks ago, and now he's quickly found himself back in trouble with the law. 17-year-old Damian Laquia was sentenced to spend an extended amount of time in a confinement program in hopes that he would rehabilitate his criminal ways. But given that he's already violated that terms of his release, it seems that the lessons he was taught did not sink in. Laquia was sent to the program after a series of felony crimes, including striking a deputy in the face and biting the officer's thumb. Prior to that incident, Laquia had been arrested 3 times in 6 months on a total of 18 different charges, including multiple counts of burglary, grand theft, and dealing in stolen property. Laquia may be armed with a handgun and should be considered dangerous. He had several tattoos, including the phrase "Family Pride" and his last name inked on his right arm. And next up is Bruce Martin, a career offender who has spent more than a decade in state prison and most of his adult life embedded in a life of crime. This 38-year-old felon is currently wanted in Lee County for violating his probation following an arrest for the sale and delivery of cocaine. Over the years, he's been booked into the Lee County Jail 14 times on 32 different charges, as well as in Orange County, where he's been arrested for armed robbery and battery on a law enforcement officer. For his actions, Martin was sentenced to 30 years in prison, however, only ended up serving roughly half of that. Last year, he spent another 6 months in prison, but despite all that time behind bars, Martin is still up to no good. A registered convicted felon, Martin has priors for multiple counts of battery, the sale and possession of cocaine, obstruction, and contempt, among others. He is believed to have gang affiliations and is known to loiter around the central Fort Myers area. Martin is 5'9", 155 pounds, and has a tattoo of Jesus on his back and a 5-point crown on his left arm. Upon his arrest, he will be held without bond. And in Collier County, deputies are on the hunt for Corvan Xavier Redden, a convicted drug dealer who has violated his state probation just months after being sentenced. Last summer, a judge told Redden that he'd have to live with certain restrictions for a period of 2 years, but it didn't take long for Redden to abandon that decision and go back on his wayward path. This 29-year-old felon has racked up multiple arrests in both Collier and Lee counties for multiple counts of drug possession, battery, and fraud. In addition to the profits of his drug trade, Redden has also been known to work as a plumber and a maintenance man. He was last known to be living in Immokalee and has a tattoo of the name Nevaeh on his right forearm. And finally, dodging deputies this Friday afternoon are two brothers who are cohorts in crime. DeQuinton Thomas and his older brother Devontae are wanted for failing to show up in court following an arrest for burglary, grand theft, and resisting officers. According to detectives, a witness spotted the duo breaking into a neighbor's home and they called 911. Deputies were able to track the two down a short time later, still in possession of the Xbox gaming console, HP tablet, laptop computer, and other items stolen during the burglary. After being released from jail 5 days later, the two were supposed to show back up in court to explain their side of the story. However, to this day, they're still keeping their distance from the courthouse. Devontae and DeQuinton were last known to be living in Lehigh, and upon their arrest, both will be held without bond. And as always, if you recognize any of the fugitives we've featured here today, you're asked to call the Crime Stoppers hotline. That number, 1-800-780-TIPS. All callers will remain anonymous and will be eligible for a cash reward of up to $1,000.
Cash is always good.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, Trish, thank you. Football fans, listen up. DirecTV is making its NFL Sunday ticket available without a satellite subscription. The $200 package will include live streaming to a computer, tablet, or a smartphone, but there is one catch. It's only being offered in select areas around the country. Well, did you see this one? Tiger Woods shows his frustration at all the cameras at the Open in Hoylake, England on Thursday. Listen to this.
It looks like he's aiming at the yellow scoreboard.
Jesus Christ. Guys.
At the top, please, on the balcony. Can you stop taking pictures?
Need absolute silence there. It looks like the flashing cameras were throwing off his game. Tiger Woods started the day 3 back of the leader.
Well, good news if you're one of the many waiting to get your hands on the new iPhone 6. Reports from a major Apple manufacturer and supplier say mass production will begin next week. First with the 4.7-inch screen version, then the larger 5.5-inch screen version in early August. The reports also show the iPhone 6 camera will feature a hugely upgraded camera.
But who needs an iPhone for a good photo if your toaster can do the job? In goes the bread, out comes your favorite selfie. That's right, a selfie toaster that will imprint your favorite selfie on your morning toast. The Vermont Novelty Toast Corporation is creating the new line or the new custom line. I'm going to get Lisa one.
Oh, good. Well, if you're hungry for some breakfast after all that toaster talk, Taco Bell just announced plans to expand its breakfast menu by adding yet another twist, a full line of grilled breakfast burritos. This just after the chain got into the AM meal business with their waffle tacos. We'll have all of your local headlines coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
Our time right now, 12:56. Let's get a rundown of today's top stories. The oil drilling saga comes to a permanent halt today. The Department of Environmental Protection just took away all of the permits once given to the Dan A. Hughes Company. That includes the controversial Collier-Hogan well site. Dan A. Hughes failed to meet the department's 9 demands along with additional violations. Hughes said it would stop activity in Florida, but without revoking the permits, the department says it could go back to production whenever it wanted.
And in just the last hour, NBC2 learned about an arrest involving 2 purse snatchings in Charlotte County. Detectives charged Aaron Matthew Watts of Port Charlotte with robbery. Authorities say he struck at the Publix on Cochran Boulevard and targeted a 61-year-old woman. She did suffer minor injuries after being dragged by her purse strap until it broke. The other happened to an 81-year-old woman who was shopping at the Tamiami Trail Winn-Dixie. Thankfully, she was not hurt.
The plane involved in a deadly crash earlier this week is now gone from the crash site off of North Captiva. Crews began moving the plane earlier this morning. By noon, it was out of sight of the typically quiet island. Investigators are now moving the plane and anything inside it to another location to work on figuring out what caused the crash. We'll follow this investigation as it continues.
It was so nice waking up this morning and not being in a tropical rainforest.
Oh, I know.
I know it's a beautiful afternoon outside. Why don't we get a kickstart to the weekend?
Let's do it.
Take a live look out at Fort Myers Beach. Some people beat us to us there apparently this afternoon, but yeah, looking just fine so far. A look at our first alert. Live Doppler radar shows the vast majority of the region was dry. Most of the afternoon should stay that way as well. And in fact, Saturday's forecast, many communities will tend to be on the drier side as well. So looking good.
Sounds good. I'm going to try to convince the boss to let us do first at 4 outside.
That would be ideal.
Have a great day, everyone.
All right, thanks.